Week 5 of Quietly Earning. We had a bit of a problem with the recording, which is a shame. But what I'm going to do is go through it again, just you and me, and just give you the head points. And obviously, you'll have your workbook following. So, excuse me if this is a bit of a monologue. Hopefully, it won't be. But this is week 5 of Quietly Earning, and a couple of points just before we get started is to have a think about how last week worked for you. How did you feel about your person that you sort of identified? How do you feel about talking to them when you're doing your socials? And I really hope that you feel slightly closer to the person that you're trying to send. They will come to you by your writing in the way that you are doing or talking about your subject. They will come to you, they will appear. Just allow that to happen. Secondly, our final workshop next week, I'd really like you to bring your questions and answers. I think questions and answers is a really valuable session. So do spend time. You can email me if you'd like to before the session, or you can put them in the chat during the session. But I think next week we're going to be sealing our learning, and next week we're going to be talking about all the things that we've learnt, but there is lots and lots of room for questions and answers next week. So do send them in, whether you're in the live session or whether you're in the recorded. So week 5 this week, we're going to be talking about our rhythms. We're going to be talking about our rhythms of making as artists, life that goes on around it, when we feel kind of most alive and full of ideas, when do we feel drained, when are we most social, and when are we selling, and when are we quiet and calm. I think knowledge is power. And all of this is obviously from a place of what I've learned over the years. It will be different for you, and that's absolutely, absolutely fine. So, first and foremost, human design. Have you heard of it? I think the reason that I bring this up is because I think had I known about it earlier in my career, I definitely would have had it done. Human design, for those that don't know, is part tiny part woo woo, in terms of astrological, where you were born, the dates, and all that kind of stuff, and a big part practical, rather like Myers-Briggs, and these brilliant kind of online tools that you can get to sort of know your personality type a bit more. They are really good tools for people that work on their own. They get us to know our sort of natural patterns, what we're good at, what we struggle with, our kind of, I just think it's an incredible tool. Next to that is another tool which is called 16 Personalities. That's free, that's online, and it just helps you to kind of identify your archetype, if you like, in terms of your working career. And I feel that actually we need all the knowledge and power we can get when it comes to putting ourselves out there, selling our work. So my thoughts are definitely look at human design. I certainly would have done had I not gone around the block so many times that I now know by experience. I really feel that it would be money well spent, worth investing in yourself. We spent a little bit of time today talking about the elements of artistry, the elements of the jobs that we do within our businesses. So we thought, I'm going to put this in your workbook, but it's a really good idea to sit and just tot up and just think about the areas that we spend time doing within our businesses. Now, that could be making, showing, sharing, researching, organizing, tidying up our workspaces, anything that it sort of takes up time within your business, packing orders, putting things online, uploading, doing website stuff, anything that takes time, just jot it down, because we'll be coming back to that later. We'll be coming back to that later. I think what we're going to be doing today is looking at our personal capacities, because when we work for ourselves, we I think we have this ability to think we have way more time than we actually do. And I think knowledge is power. And I think when we recognize what we're actually playing with in terms of hours per week, per month, per day, we have an ability to kind of pick our activity, if you like. So what I'd like you to do is to have to think about what you do around your work world on a daily basis. Now, this might be including caring for kids, caring for parents. You might have a huge garden. You might have 10 dogs or llamas. Anything goes. What are you working around? And I think that's really, really important. Make a list. Make a list. So we've got a list of things that we have to do actively in our business. And then we also are making a list of the things that we have to meet and do daily. I think by doing that, that offers us a realistic making time, making hours. It offers us knowledge of, actually, I know that within a day I have 3 hours to make. So if we have those 3 hours, we may not jam pack them with everything that we tend to try and shove in. And we can begin to think about batch making, batch photographing, batch adminning. We can come back to that. So, my thoughts are, in your workbook, I'm going to ask you to keep yourself a weekly diary. I did this recently because I've been working with a charity, and I thought, actually, when we do get some grant funding and I actually can end up charging, I need to know how long I'm spending on a project. So I started writing down the hours, and I was really, really surprised. So a bit like calorie counting, which we don't do anymore because dieting is rubbish and we're never ever going to do that again. Thank you very much. Keeping a weekly diary of your hours. You can split this up, if you like, into making hours, admin hours, whatever. However you want to do it is fine. It's just an acknowledgement of the amount of hours you're spending on your business and the amount of time that you have within your capacity. So, knowledge of the above prevents us from overbooking fares, tiredness, and of course, burnout. So, movement. Have you heard of busy foolery? We talked about that. Busy foolery, of being a busy fool. I actually hate that term, but I probably hate it because it rings true for me, or it has done in the past. Busy foolery is when you are busy in your business, but it's actually not moving you forward. An example of this might be that you're having an exhibition and you insist on handwriting 1,000 envelopes. Well, I mean, personally, I quite like a handwritten envelope, but that is busy foolery. That's not necessarily going to move you forward in your business. It's a nice to do, but you haven't got time to do that. So being aware of the busy fool is a good idea. And actually, a side note to that is something I read many, many years ago, which said that if you are thinking about your business, let's just say you're on a rowboat on holiday with your family, with your kids. If you are thinking about your business, you're working. And that was an ouch moment for me. If you are thinking about your business, you're working. So there's nowhere to go with that. I'm not going to give you any rules or anything. It's just an awareness. It's just an awareness. So sort of protecting your time, ring fencing your time, valuing your time, I think is really, really important. We talked a little bit earlier about batch making. Now, if we go back to our cash cow, do you remember our cash cow in week three, two or three? Can you spend some time batch making those? Later on in this session, we're going to be looking at our months, and what works for me is only what works for me. It's a share of that. But actually, what doesn't work for me is filling out my diary saying, right, on Tuesdays I do this, on Thursdays I do that, on Fridays I do that. It just doesn't work for me. I'm emotionally led. When I come to my studio, I'm thinking, right, today I would like to make that painting and I'd like to do that. And that's okay, that's good, but that's a long time getting there. That's, it's been doing this for 30 years. So I think what would have helped me in the past is to think mentally about batch making. So spending a week on something. It might be photographing, updating my website. It might be dedicating a week to that. It might be upping my printmaking, getting a week dedicated to that. I think what would have helped me and what does help me and feels manageable is dedicating a week to something. So that might be a good way forward. And if you, I don't know how you feel about batch contenting with social media. It has never worked for me, but if it works for you, then perfect. Spend yourself a week making content. I'm gonna have a sip of tea now. Nothing works without tea. I think batch contenting, not batch contenting, batch making, dedicating a week, dedicating a little bit of space, even if I'm emotionally led by it, stops us mentally switching. You know what that means? Have you heard of the man from Porlock, where the very famous writer had been slaving away, working in his studio, or writing away, and he suddenly had the answer to life. He had the question of life. He knew what it was. And then the postman came, the man from Porlock, knocked on the door, delivered his parcel, and the answer was gone. So the man from Porlock basically says, you you get and if you're disturbed, you're going to lose flow. And I think it's the same with mental switching. So if I was painting my dogs, and then I got a commission and I needed to take that commission on. I needed to take money in for painting that dog, but my head was in flowers. What I learned to do, and which worked really, really well for me, is that I would take the dog commission. I would then announce that I've got two more dog painting commission spaces, put them out there, and I would wait until I've got three dogs together, because I knew then that my hand would be stronger. I knew that I would enjoy the process a bit more. The painting would be lighter because I'm working on two or three at the same time, not just one. And also my head could be more fully in it. So actually kind of batch making those commissions, those dog portraits worked so much better for me. So just to remember that actually perhaps it may be a good way for you to think about dedicating time in terms of a week, and especially where things like cash cows are concerned. Um, Weekly planning, a monthly planning works for some people. Also, busy to-do lists. Oh God, it might just be that I'm older now, but I really struggle with them. I really struggle with got to do this, got to do that. Where's the time for creativity around that? I think it's really important to plan in time for being an artist in your studio. Plan in time to just poodle, tinker. That's very often when you make your best work. Switching off your phone, switching off tech, putting on an audio book, enjoying the peace and quiet, you are fighting here for your creativity, and your creativity comes through space. So when we have those lovely people that like to knock on the door and say, "Oh, hi, I was just local and I thought I'd have a cup of tea," and just because you work from home does not mean that you're available. So show your teeth, protect your time, even if you're sitting in your studio whittling. You're thinking, you're coming up with ideas. I think there are different rhythms, which different headers, which I think are really important. Financial rhythm. Not every month is going to be a good month, especially for artists. When you're self-employed, you might have a really great month, and then you have normally will have other months which are not nearly so good. I tend not to analyze my work or my business in terms of monthly or quarterly. I tend to just look annually at the year, at the end. So just recognize that if you have a really, really good month, it's likely you're going to have not a great month at some point. So try to squirrel away something on that. And actually, on this point, what can be really good, and I found really, really liberating for me, is to try and keep myself what's called a development fund. Now, that might just be 40 quid sat in an account, but my goodness, the freedom of thought it gives me. That development fund is for developing you as an artist, a maker. It's not for buying art materials, it's not for going on holiday, it's for developing you. So it might be a course, it might be a book, something that you feel is going to take you forward in your business. Then it's really, really, really lovely to have a development fund. So even if it's 20, 30, 40 quid, whatever, just keep it there and know that it's there for the development of you. I honestly can't tell you how grown up that made me feel. And I felt valued by myself, frankly, actually. Bodily rhythms and energy mapping. So, seasons when you're indoors, seasons when you're outdoors. What works best for you, and how can you build your work around that? Stretching of our bodies and exercise. So I'm not a gym bunny in the slightest, but if I've been in my studio all day and I'm working really hard on the computer, I will just take myself off and do a 20-minute yoga session at the end of the day just to stretch my body. Are you a morning maker? Are you an afternoon maker? Again, just good to note. I'm supercharged in the morning. By the afternoon, I'm fading. So it's interesting. However, actually, if I give myself an afternoon snooze, I'm supercharged again in the afternoon. So it's a bit like the Duracell bunny. Admin work. What works for you? After years and years and years, I now know that I'm best doing my product loading up, not my photography, but my product loading up to my website or writing blogs or something like that on the laptop in front of the telly at night. It works really well. I'm just like, I'm sort of half watching, half doing this, and it just suits me brilliantly. Again, that's something that, just works for me, but, it's interesting. Periods, ugh, it annoys me that I even had to take this into account, but certainly when when I before HRT, I think that's what I'm trying to say. I would have to consider my energy levels because my energy was so depleted. So the week before I got my period, I kind of know, and I purposely wouldn't book any workshops in for that week because I just knew I wouldn't have the energy for them. Again, annoying. HRT massively sorted out the problem for me, but if it's part of your rhythm, just recognize it and do not berate yourself for having a more gentle week that week if you can. Christ knows blokes would if they had periods. Creative recovery times after you've had a really busy, intense period of making or an exhibition or teaching. What does a creative recovery period look like for you? For me, it's back at my printmaking, to my printmaking press. That's the manual process of that fills me up. The manual kind of action just fills me up. It grounds me and it brings me back into a kind of creative recovery time. Um, Admin weeks. Yeah, I mean, we talked about taking a week and doing these things. So if you've got a website that needs updating, products uploading, all the rest of it, consider taking yourself a week. Life events, kids on school holidays. My lovely friend, Joe Pear, who's an amazing printmaker, when I had one of my tiny babies in my arms, my first one, I remember Joe saying to me, Sam, as a maker, don't ever begrudge your kids their school holidays. All that really hurt because I was like, but she was right. She was absolutely right. Remember, we said when you're thinking about work, you're working. Actually, the school holidays, they need them. They need rest, they need downtime, and so do you. So it's a very easy thing for me to say now that the kids are older. I know that. But actually, that really resonated with me. So I feel like it's only fair to share with you. Family demands, illness, parents, that type of thing. It's life. It's life. So again, back to the hours of making, the practicality of looking at what we've got to make with, that tells us so much. Saying no is okay. Saying no is okay. I'm going to say that again. Saying no is okay. Today I read a fact, which actually I put a story up about people pleasing, and as a recovering people pleaser myself, it's a really important thing to look at. I read today that people pleasing can cost somebody over a lifetime between 300,000 and 450,000 pounds. Now that's in terms of lost revenue because you're giving lifts to people, or you're doing this, or you're doing that, or you're giving out more time. So just be aware that what we're doing here is we are really valuing our time. Our time is our work, is our business. When you're making, you're working. Okay, you're working. And I think it's really, really important to understand that all of the various parts of our career, because we're self-employed and we might be working around children, we're jamming it in around other things. Now, very often this can be our friend. The interiors work I did, the work with the lines, these works. Now, these came about because my children were teeny, teeny, teeny tiny. And I had a bionic boy who was 3 and my baby. And my drawing board was up at home. And I would be so lucky to get 5, 6, 7 minutes at one time. So I cut my cloth accordingly. I made something in that time that was doable. And that's where the ink line drawings came from. As I made more, I could afford the time, I could afford the art materials because it was just ink and paper. And they got better and they got stronger and they became something bigger. They became an entire collection. So don't worry if you're restricted, just keep going, keep going. I think if you've got tiny children or you're really, really busy, you have the ability to dial your business up and dial it down. So if when you're at your busiest with small children, maybe try to keep your business going at 5 or 10%, because that is the solid foundation for it to grow whenever you want. I think it's a really good idea to look at a map. This is my map, which I'll put in your workbook. Now, on this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through the months that work for me. You're going to make your own one, but I'm going to run you through the months here of what I've discovered works for me. It may not be the same for you, but in green, I've got my making times. These are times that I find are brilliant for making. In yellow, I've got my exhibiting times, and in orange, I've got my teaching times. So I'm just going to run you through it because, and this I think will really, really help you. I'm going to get you to get a piece of paper, and you're going to take 6 months at the top, 6 months at the bottom. So cut it into 1 month per section. And what works for me is January, February, and the first couple of weeks of March are brilliant making times for me, for making months. They're very little is happening in the art world. Very little is actually selling. If it does, it's jam or gravy. It's very, very little is happening. So these are times to squirrel yourself away and wait and make your work, batch work, make your work that stands me in good stead for the year. They're also brilliant teaching months for me, particularly with other artists, because very little is happening. So they're good months for teaching. Now, if you want to run some workshops, this is a really good time to do so. People can gift them for Christmas gifts. So they can have a voucher. Don't spend the money until the workshop. It's not, there's no joy in that, believe you me. However, these are really lonely months for people locally. So if you decide you want to do something locally, these are great months to do it. And people absolutely love to come to an in-person event. So we got to March, didn't we? So beginning of March, April, May, and June are good months for selling, particularly May, end of April, May, and June. June is a cracking month. Any later than June, people begin to start thinking more about holidays. July, okay for workshops early before the schools break up. Okay for workshops. Again, April, May, and June are great for workshops outside. But if you're going to have an exhibition, art fairs, markets, all these things out and about selling, these are good months. July, end of July, everybody's on holiday. August is rubbish. If you sell anything in August, well done you. But majority of the time, nothing happens in August. So it's again quite a good time for making, a bit like January and February. September, oh, and but also quite good for in-person workshops, actually, July and August, if you want to. Don't have too many hopes for August, but certainly if you're doing family or community workshops, amazing months. Mid to end of September, October, beginning of November are fantastic selling months. Really good to be out and about. I do, if I'm going to do an online show, I tend to do it at the beginning of November. End of September, October, November are brilliant because people are beginning to think about their home, they're getting cozy, they're thinking about their home, they're not necessarily thinking about Christmas yet. So good months for exhibitions. End of November, December, very little happens. You might sell some stuff if you have stuff that's suitable for gifting. December, very little in terms of fine art. Now, if you are a an artist that makes things according to the years, the yearly milestones, so Valentine's, Mother's Day, Christmas, birthdays, if you're an artist that makes for those, try to think about those deadlines 6 months in advance. Try to have them wrapped up 6 months in advance, in terms of what you're doing, what you're making, and then beginning to get them out there. When I've worked with Not on the High Street and more kind of commercial sellers, they are always talking to you about getting yourself 6 months ready, giving it lead up. So if your if you are a good seller at Christmas, think about that in January and February. Think about that during those key making months. What can you make? What can you batch make? Just bring yourself forward with your kind of planning. So And also, just to finish up, in terms of art and solo exhibitions, for me, June and October are the best months. So that I hope will help you in your planning. I'm going to ask you to make yourself one of these. Now, you can do this through the lens. This is the lens of my overall business, if you like. But you could do one of these just through the eye lens of energy mapping. If you know that actually you're rubbish in January and February and all you want to do is eat chocolates and sit by the fire, fine, write it down. If you know that you come alive in the summer and you love making work outside, great, write it down. So you might have two or three of these. One might be energy time, one might be selling time, one might be making. And then when you've made a few, you can begin to map them all together on one sort of yearly map that gives you the outline of how you personally best work. So I really, really hope you found that of use. As I said, next week we're going to be talking about questions and answers. And a couple of people, and in fact, a number of people, which is very gratifying, have asked how they could work with me more. Well, I think I'm going to open some one-to-one sessions. These are going to be, I think, £75 for an hour, £90 for an hour and a half. So if you want me to have eyes on your business and us have a chat, we can make that happen. The other thing that I'm going to do, the next teaching I'm going to do is two workshops, I think, over about workshops. We're going to be workshopping workshops because I recently have been mentoring artists in delivering workshops, and I've been bowled over by the response, the need, the booking for in-person events. And I really believe that all artists should at least have the skill and the confidence to pull together a workshop if they need it. It's a good route to cash. It's a wonderful thing to do because people get to know you, they get to know your space, they get to know, like, and trust you before they then come to an exhibition. So my next event is going to be based around that, and it's called Quietly Encouraging. So we're going to be, I'll be talking to you about that soon. But other than that, my darlings, I'm so sorry I couldn't bring you the live recording, but you're all caught up and your workshop will be out, your workbook will be out. And then next week, bring your questions. All right. Loads of love. Thank you.